The first step in creating our picnic basket sides is to resaw on the bandsaw a series of 1/8 inch thick strips that will be woven together to form the panels of the basket's frame. Now, in order to plane these down to their 3/32 final thickness, I use a carrier board, which is basically just a board with a groove dadoed down the middle. I'm using some adhesive transfer tape here in order to stick the individual strips in place to prepare them for planing. Now we run the strip and the carrier board through the planer, which is set up to plane exactly flush with the top of the carrier board and create a 3/32 inch thick strip. Now here I've laid the 7 narrower vertical strips and the top and bottom rails for our picnic basket's long sides on the bench top. And I'm going to use a series of 1.5 inch wide spacer blocks, which I cut from some scrap plywood, in order to check the spacing of the vertical strips. And we're going to go ahead and lay them all into the grooves that are plowed into the bottom rail here. Now I'm going to use a pencil to mark the approximate position of each of the vertical weaving strips on the lower rail, and use this as a guide for where to apply glue into the groove. Because we're going to go ahead now and glue these individual vertical strips into the bottom rail. Apply a little glue to the end of the weaving strip as well, and now I'm going to use the spacer blocks once again to assure the proper positioning of each and every one of these vertical strips. And I'm just going to work my way along the length of the rail until all 8 of the vertical weaving strips are in place. Once I've confirmed that they're all right, I'm going to use the top rail just to make sure that the length of the strips is correct, that they're fully inserted in the bottom rail, and use a square as well to make sure that nothing is drifted out of place. Now I'm going to go ahead and clamp a nice straight board to the surface of my bench top, and I want to position this so that it's about 1/4 inch away from the end of the bottom rail. Now this is going to form a stop for our individual horizontal weaving strips as we put them in place. Make sure they're all even. Now we're going to go ahead and insert one of the weaving strips into the free ends of the vertical strips. And we're going to pull it down, first with our hands, and then I'm going to go ahead and use a pair of quick action clamps, the kind with handles that you can pump to tighten them. And this is going to allow us to, in a very controlled and gradual manner, pull each of our weaving strips into place. Now I'm going to insert the second horizontal strip underneath the first vertical strip in order to alternate our weaving direction. I'm going to bring its end flush with the stop board or fence, and then once again use the quick action clamps to pull it down. You don't have to worry about how far you pull down each of these subsequent strips. You'll adjust their spacing later. By the time you get to the 7th and last horizontal weaving strip, it can be really quite tough to get it to alternate going under and over the vertical strips. So, just be patient, and if you get a little bit stuck, you can tap on the end of the strip with a mallet in order to advance it into place. Just work patiently along, and the only thing you need to make sure, of course, is that all the ends of the weaving strips are flush against our temporary stop fence there. This will assure that they're in the right position. And once again, use the quick action clamps to pull this final strip into final position. Now I'm going to go ahead and use a square, because during the weaving process it's almost certain that some of the vertical strips get a little bit catawampus side to side. And just tap these back in place so that they still are nice and square. And now we're going to go ahead and apply some glue both to the groove in the horizontal top rail and onto the ends of the vertical strips. And this takes a little bit of wiggling to get these guys to go in place because they're not going to be perfectly in line. Once again, just be patient and work your way down the length of the rail. Once all the ends are in place, you can go ahead and use a mallet to tap everything home. Now I'm going to use a stile from our picnic basket frame to assure that the distance between the two horizontal rails is correct. Also, use a square to make sure that the ends of the two horizontal rails are even with one another. Once all four of the picnic basket sides are woven, I'm going to use a sanding block to lightly chamfer the outside edges of the wide weaving strips, as it's going to make it a lot easier to get them into their grooves in the stiles during the next assembly steps. In preparation for joining the woven picnic basket sides to the corner stiles, we have to flatten the ends of the wide weaving strips. And we do this by placing a couple of clamping caul strips, one above and one below the ends of the woven strips. And first we're going to press them together using a small clamp, quick action clamp. Now I'm going to put a pair of deep-throated clamps on from either end. These happen to be Luthier's cam clamps, but you can use any kind of deeper-throated clamp. And you can see now, once we apply these, we can remove the central clamp, which would get in the way of the gluing, obviously. And then all our woven strips are going to be in line and ready to go into their slots. Now we're ready to glue one of the corner stiles onto the top and bottom horizontal rails on the long side of the picnic basket. Here we're fitting both the loose tenon joints and we're carefully fitting the ends of the wide weaving strips into the slots in the stile. Give that a little tap, and then you can remove the clamps and clamping cauls. Then we're going to repeat the same process of clamping and then gluing on the stile at the other end of the long picnic basket side. And once everything is nice and lined up, we'll use a pair of clamps to clamp the whole assembly together. Now in this video I've omitted the glue just to speed up the process of demonstration. Once the assembly is all clamped up, it's a really good idea to check the diagonals of the frame to make sure they're equal, as this indicates that the entire picnic basket side is nice and square. In this next assembly step, I've clamped the long picnic basket side to the edge of my bench with the stile at the top, and I've once again used my clamps and clamping cauls to flatten the wide weaving strips so that I can then insert the loose tenons and the ends of the weaving strips into the corner stile. Now once you have this located in place and everything is correct, you can go ahead and apply clamps to clamp that short side to the long side at the stile. After gluing the other short side to the same long side, we have the whole assembly upright on the bench top, and now we're going to glue on the final long side onto the open ends of the short sides. Same process as before. I'm using my clamping cauls and deep throat clamps to keep all the weaving strips straight, and then carefully aligning and inserting all the parts as necessary. Once all the joints are fitted together, you can remove all the deep throat clamps and clamping cauls and go ahead and apply regular clamps to basically secure the entire assembly. The last thing I like to do is use a pair of pinch sticks, or some people call them pinch rods. With these pointed sticks, you can basically compare the inside diagonal dimensions of a box or a frame to make sure it's the same, because if it is the same, it means that the assembly is indeed square.